Hello, and thank you so much for joining. Today, we're going to be giving I think it's just me today. Today, I'm going to be talking through sort of an introduction to developer relations. What developer relations is. Oh, hey, lovely. What, what developer relations is as a field, what kind of experience developer relations usually asks for, and how you can get into that if you're interested in it. It's going to be incredible. Well, you know what? I hope that this is going to be incredibly low stress, but let's see how it goes. All right. And I am all about getting a chance to answer your questions. So if you've got anything you want to ask about getting into developer outreach or really anything else about working in tech that you think I'd be helpful with, just go ahead and give me a shout anytime. I'm super happy to jump in and handle a question, then pop back out. I was a teacher for a million years. You can't scare me. So we're going to be talking about getting into developer relations today. If you want to have a follow-up later, you can find me on Twitter at Jessalyn Rose. Or if you want to see what kind of stuff I do, I'm over at jessica.tech. But so far as my backgrounds, my bona fides, if that counts, I've been working in developer relations for about, over 10 years now. It's quite a long time. And before that, I worked in education. So I worked as a teacher and then came and taught myself some development skills and got into developer relations instead. These days, I'm a consultant within developer relations, helping teams with hiring new Devrels like you, or much more often and a little bit less excitingly, things like strategy around outreach. So far as housekeeping, if you're joining us live, hello, lovelies. We're on both Twitch and YouTube because who doesn't like to make noise but across a bunch of platforms? You can both comment, you can all comment in the little comments tab if you like, and I'll throw that up on screen. Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that as we go. There's nothing super complicated. There are no big ground rules aside from be lovely to each other. And we're going to go ahead and get started by saying, well, what is developer relations? If you showed up to listen to me, I imagine you probably have some kind of indication. But developer relations is the field of developer outreach. Maybe your company has, maybe you're working for a company that has a developer tool, or your primary product is an API or a service. Developer relations is when you know what, people in Devrel hate this, but it's a sort of very, very specific type of very technical marketing. And you say, oh, is developer relations different than developer outreach? And I say, well, it's just a different word for it, isn't it? You say, oh, is developer relations different than developer evangelism or community building? And I said, well, sometimes these roles are a little bit different, but they're all often in the same space. So we can go ahead and just sort of look at all those roles in sort of a lump. And I'm very biased. I've been doing this job for a while. Platypus is suggesting that DevRels, it's when you're protecting developers from other developers. And you know what? Kind of. You're not just taking your company's product or your company's service and saying, hey, use the thing, but you're also taking feedback from developers back to your product and saying, hey, we should stop doing that thing. People hate that. Or, oh, we should add that feature. Oftentimes it can overlap with engineering. It can overlap with product. It can overlap. I love it when it overlaps with support. Overlaps heavily with technical writing. There are all these existing fields in tech. And if you're doing any of these roles already, oof, what a great like segue to sidestep in. I think it's a great job because it's a job I do, but there are actual tangible benefits. Oof, I think a job that didn't give you any tangible benefits, that would be brutal, wouldn't it? It's a great job for networking. And I suppose a great job for extroverts, even though I'm a false extrovert myself. I'm just faking it. You're getting the chance to do often presentation work or writing or really putting yourself out there. It's a great job for building your network and building your profile. And yeah, when we talk about building your profile, it's growing your visibility. Maybe in Devrel, you'd be giving a presentation on a stream like this. Terrifying, isn't it? Or maybe you'd be giving a conference talk or writing very fancy things. It really helps you get your name out there if you're the kind of person who's inclined. Let's talk about what we care about when we talk about jobs, getting paid. Developer relations has had a really big boom in the last 18 months or so, ever since the world got weird. And pay's increased, I'd say between 20 and 40% in DevRel roles. It's pretty exciting right now. Although I will confess that it can be difficult. So getting your first DevRel role can feel a lot like getting your first engineering role. Breaking into DevRel for the first time can be really hard, but the pay's often quite good when you get in. I often say that you should be paid at least what you would expect from a corresponding engineering role in the same company, usually a bit higher these days. Okay, look, when I say it's great for travel, I mean in a hypothetical world where everything is fine again. It was a great job for travel pre 2020. And it has the potential to be a really exciting job for travel again. But right now, a lot of the outreach we're doing in developer relations roles is online. And a lot of employers, I'd say most employers, are keeping things online. Travel back in DevRel used to be around conferences or events or on site work. And these days, we've taken almost all of that virtual, which is, you know what, it's a good time for that to be virtual. So it was and may well again be travel rich, but also about learning some of these business skills. So let's say you've got a development background, fantastic for working in DevRel, getting to learn some of these marketing skills, getting to learn some of the product and planning skills, some of the even the technical support skills. It's a really, really fantastic way to expand your knowledge base. But it's not perfect. DevRel is still a job, and jobs aren't perfect. Let's talk about some things that can be especially challenging in DevRel. Burnout's really common. A lot of folks find it can be very, very difficult to be forward facing and talking to people all the time. Back when travel was a thing, travel was a big source of burnout. And in the remote working time, getting really good boundaries between your work and not work time can be really make burnout a really serious issue. Back when travel was more common and should in-person events come back, oftentimes meetups or in-person events involved environments with alcohol. A lot of events in recent years had been getting away from that before something happened to keep us off of planes and in our homes. But if for folks who find being around alcohol especially challenging, it feels fair to flag, hey, this is something that is often a challenge in DevRel roles that involve in-person events. And in the same way that burnout can be a challenge, work-life balance can be a challenge. It's a role where you're dealing with people and dealing with community. And folks can feel, well, I was going to say it feels like folks have a lot of expectations for you, but folks have a lot of expectations for you. It's pretty reasonable that work-life balance can be really hard, especially for folks maybe working at startups. Ooh, it's a little siren outside. And I know I kind of put this as a plus as well as a minus, but there's a lot of social contact in this role. You're dealing with people a lot. And it's a bonus. You get to do a lot of networking. And it's also a challenge. You get to do a lot of networking. Yeah, really thinking carefully about, oh, am I the kind of person where a effusive amount of human contact is good for me day in, day out? It's a really exciting question to ask yourself. And you may find that your answer to that changes in the job. Stress. I mean, it's 2021. We've had a lot of practice with stress, haven't we? Um, the world is stressful right now, but this can also be a reasonably high stress job. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't hard selling you on, oh, you should totally do the job I do. It's great, without flagging, oh gosh, there's some challenges in this role and it seems fair to talk about them. So I'm going to talk to you about, and the way we're going to format this is I'm going to chat to you about a couple of different sort of families of activities that are common to developer relations. The thing about developer relations roles are so many companies do them so vastly differently that it can be a little bit challenging to say, oh, this is what it'll be like. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and show you some activities and some tasks and duties that are really common to some of these roles that I see often in Devrel roles. And also, we're going to take a look at how you can get some experience or the experience you may already have that you better be including in your resume. Yeah. If any of you have any questions, you can go ahead and throw them at me anytime you want, and we'll just sort of handle them as we go, real mellow. Oftentimes, you say, oh, it's developer relations. We're going to talk about being a hands-on developer first. And I say, well, we will. But I want to talk about technical writing first because almost all of the DevRel roles I'm seeing these days involve some kind of technical writing. This may be creating documentation. This may be editing and contributing to documentation. Or you may be doing tutorial writing or content writing. There's just a lot of writing, especially with travel not being a thing for right now. The way we're communicating primarily with each other is I'm going to write something and send it to you. You can get, oh, one of my favorite technical writers is here. Hey, Starfall. If you've got any tips, actually, I'm so sorry to put you. No pressure. Let's step back from this high pressure thing. If anybody has any tips, oh, here's something I think is so important about technical writing, or here's a good way to get experience about technical writing, go ahead and chime in. Super low pressure, though, not putting anybody on the point. Yanabe is saying, oh, maybe an English degree might be useful. Do you know, I'm delighted by this because I have an English degree. So I did English literature and linguistics, which doesn't sound like it would be terrifically valuable for technical role, but I found it really, really enjoyable. If you've got an English degree, yeah, absolutely. Shout it proudly in your DevRel application. Say, oh, do you know what? Include in your cover letter. Say, oh, my background as an English grad really leaves me in a good position for technical writing, which I understand is quite a bit of your role. Oh, Starfall is saying, my tip is to join the Write the Docs Slack, and we'll get there in a second, won't we? Oh, wow, we've got a whole bunch of lit folks, and Hal was saying, you know what? Literature degree again. Fabulous. So we've got a lot of reassurance. And the other thing I want to reassure you about is getting into DevRel when you don't have a computer science degree or even the most raw engineering background is totally possible. I am the world's fluffiest generalist. I always say in interviews, ooh, yeah, I suppose it's easier when you're very senior to say in interviews, say, oh, I'm super happy to teach. I'm super happy to work with things. I'm super happy to build demos. Don't let me write production code. And I still get by okay. Ooh, maybe I won't after having said that out loud. And you say, well, Jess, because we're friends, we're chill first name basis and all that. I don't have time to go get a technical writing role to get a DevRel role. That doesn't make any sense. I said, well, no. There's other things you can do. You can either get experience by, or you may have this experience already, in which case I want you to spotlight it in applying. Maybe you've written tutorials either for your own site or for someone else, but like, have you ever written a tutorial? And it doesn't have to be a deadly serious, here's how you make blue widgets out of, I'm trying to abstract away nonsense. Oh, V Prevails is making such a fantastic point. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm saying, do you know what? People who are just starting out with technical writing or just starting out with a certain type of work with these technical concepts can be even better at describing this because you don't have that expert bias around what you're describing. This is such an excellent point. I really massively appreciate it. So you can write tutorials. I don't care whether or not you got paid for that. That is still experience. answering written questions online. I have seen so many people in developer relations applications include a Stack Overflow or other kinds of or even Reddit to say, oh, here's where I answer people's technical questions. Please take that. Yeah. And they say contributing to open source documentation. It's just a lovely thing to do. But also it's practical, real world experience saying, hey, I'm doing this for a live project. This is professional experience. Give me credit for this and hire me. Please pay me silly money to come work on this with you. Give me a second. I'm terrible. If you've worked in a role as a technical writer, come and tell me about it. Come and tell your employer about it and say, oh, hey, you know what? I've been working in technical writing for a little while, and I'm really excited about different kinds of technical communication. I think that making the jump into developer relations is a really good next step for me. If you've been working in technical writing, apply for Devrel roles. People are going to trip over you, or they better if they're smart. Starfall helpfully pointed out that Write the Docs is a fantastic community for learning more about technical writing. They've got international conferences, they've got a lot of resources, and any time I've interacted with them, they have only been absolute sweethearts. I would head over to Write the, oh, hang on, I can. I can go ahead and throw that into the chat just so you all can copy and paste that if that feels useful. So we've talked about technical writing. We feel okay there. Everything's chill. What about developer work? I mean, it's developer relations. Developers right there in the title. I should probably be able to do some demo building maybe, or work on the developer experience side, or maybe I'm an extremely good developer myself. As part of your outreach for developers, you're going to need to have the technical credibility to say, here's how this works, here's what's going on, here's what I'm doing. Yeah. And I want to reassure you that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be the best developer in the room or the best developer that's ever lived. I am, again, a very joyful goofus, and I've gotten by okay. I know tons of folks who are stronger in some of these other skill groups we're talking about, and not rawr, the most dedicated 10x developer. Devrel still has roles for you, and things are still okay. And also, who wants to work with someone who thinks they're the best developer in the world? And you say, oh, okay, I need to work as a developer before I can work in developer relations. And I say, well, let's look at the different kinds of ways, the different kinds of experience that we might be able to count for this. Yeah, working as a developer is totally going to count. And that's really the route most people, a lot of people, many people take into Devrel, and that's okay. But if you've got contributions to open source projects, if you say, hey, I've been doing this for fun or for credit in my own time, that's still work. That's still development work. You better be putting that on your resume or CV if you're here in Europe and getting credit for that. I'll fuss you out if you're not. Doing contract work as well. If you say, well, I haven't been a full-time dev. And one thing I really want to flag is it doesn't have to be paid contract work. Did you build your sister a website? Did you fix your hairdresser's networking problem? Doing contract work is still work. And the work you do still counts, even if you didn't get paid for it. I mean, I'd love to encourage you to get paid for your work, but that's a separate conversation. But make sure you're counting all of this experience, even if you're thinking, oh, I just did these little bits and pieces. You put those little bits and pieces down or I'll fuss you out. And when we talk about the work you're doing counts as work, this includes working on your own ideas. If you've been building weird stuff, if you've been building demos, if you tried to make your own open source project, if you built your own website, include these. Show your potential employer, no, your future employer. And that's going to be pretty exciting. Well, the resources for this are a little bit more challenging. I can't say, oh, go to such and such a place and they'll give you, oh, do you know what? I've lied. want to contribute to a chill open source project. I like free code work. You know what? They're absolute sweethearts, and their contribution guide is so good. But the development work you're going to be doing to sort of learn these skills if you don't have them yet, or to really prove that you have these skills, get that experience you can write down, is going to be pretty personal. I can say, oh, I really like the contribution stuff over at Free Code Camp, but yeah, that's me. Have a look at open source and projects you like, or build a portfolio of weird side projects that you like yourself. It's really about sort of shopping about a bit and finding developer communities that meet your needs. Anything I could recommend here is going to be kind of challenging for me to appropriately sell it. Presentation skills, how scary. And I want to go ahead and frame this appropriately as well, because I'm talking to you, and this is a Devrel task, isn't it? It's presentation-y. Not all Devrel roles will make you get on stage. Sometimes you can be writing a lot, but many of these may ask for presentation skills. You might be able to do something like this, or do a very stoic, very businessy corporate webinar. Maybe you're going to talk to the press, how scary. Or more conventional things like conference talks or meetups. These can all be really common, but they don't have to happen in every single DevRel role. If you've got stage fright, there's still DevRel work for you. It's all chill. You say, oh, how do I get experience? Yeah, how presenting, how terrifying. I say, okay, well, all of our local, I hope all of our local meetups, many of our local meetups have gone online these days. If you want to speak at one, this sounds so weird, but you just go. I'm saying, oh, just go talk to strangers. That's easy for everybody. One could message or email somebody running a meetup and say, hey, I've got a talk idea. Would it be possible for me to pitch this to you? Could I come and give this? And meetup talks tend to be a lot less polished than conference talks, a lot less relaxed. It's a really good way to start getting that formal public speaking experience. If you're ready for like big stress, medium stress, I mean, it depends on your personality type. Maybe submitting to a conference. And if you were to submit your talk ID to a conference, you would generally need to think of a title for your talk, an abstract, a short summary for your talk, and have a little bio for you. You'll need both of those for your meetup as well, but meetups you can often pitch a lot more informally. These conferences are mostly online these days, mostly virtual these days as well. But that looks amazing on a DevRel application. Say, oh, I gave a talk at such and such fancy Rust conference last year or last month. You should definitely hire me so I can give fancy talks for your company. How impressive, how scary. Podcasts as well. What if you want to speak, but you don't really want to write a whole talk? Or if you're like me, you don't want to put on makeup to have to stream or to get up on stage. Podcasts are often quite a bit less formal. You don't have a scripted talk you're giving, but many podcasts you can reach out and say, hey, I really like the things you're doing. I do this. Would I be an appropriate guest? Could I come and speak? And that's really cool. What a different audience. You could give a webinar, which is a very old-fashioned way these days. The kids today, it's streaming now instead of webinars, isn't it? So you could say, oh, here I'm giving off the top of my head, an informational presentation about Devrel with a Q&A. That seems like it counts. We'll say streaming instead of webinar. Webinar is very hokey. Or if you're looking at conferences, so you're looking at online events, ask to be on a panel. And yes, I know, panel. When you see somebody putting together a Twitter space online, you can say, oh, can I be involved? Or put your own together. Do you know what I'd love to see? I'd love to know, if I say it, I'll have to do it, won't I? Would it be useful to have a Twitter space with folks trying to get into DevRel, talking about their experiences? Have a shout at me if you all think that would be useful. I'd love an excuse to spotlight talent trying to get into the industry. And I love to talk. You say, oh, Jess, public speaking, that sounds like just a skill that one has, the back of the pocket. How do I get better at public speaking? And I say, well, I mean, mostly through public speaking. You get better at presenting through presenting. So go on meetup.com and politely message some folks at Meetup. Say, oh, would you mind if I gave a talk about this thing? Would it be okay? Papercall.io is a collection of a bunch of different conferences you can submit to. How scary, how exciting. If you wanted to go big right now and speak at a conference, yeah. Callback Women is a Twitter account that retweets a lot of different conference calls for paper. I believe it's offline now, but I still really like to go back and look at past years to say, oh, I know in October, usually that's when all things open are. I'll add it to my calendar and look out for it. And this one's my favorite one because this is the one where you're getting experience or you're getting credit for being a lovely person. Community building or community management or community maintenance can be a big part of a lot of Devrel roles. And you can have done this outside of tech as well. But to be able to say, oh, hey, I've done this community work. Employers not only have the assurance that you have these skills that are really valuable, but maybe there's also the indication that they can trust you. Say, oh, you've done this kind of work in the past. You're probably not going to embarrass me if you go and do some more community management. You've got your bones. And you can get some experience, or very, very, very clearly, you can document experience and get credit for it by helping run a meetup. The same way you can reach out to a meetup organizer and say, hey, can I speak at this? You can say, oh, do you need any volunteers? And this felt a lot easier back when meetups were in person, but people need help running online ones as well. So, oh, do you need any help with online moderation? Do you need any help with stream moderation if you're streaming it? Do you need help with organization? Or set up your own if you don't have anything local. Everything's online these days. You don't have to buy people pizza. You can volunteer at other events, so an online conference, or if you're someplace where it's terribly safe, you could volunteer at in-person events as well, like a hackathon or a conference. So I'm such a mother duck where I'm like, don't you expose yourself to getting sick if it's not safe. I really like mentoring as a movement or as a way to demonstrate experience in community building and really fitness for this, especially when you're onboarding or teaching or mentoring people about specific technologies. I once had somebody apply for a developer relations role, whereas one of their references, they included their mentee. I'm consistently impressed. The whole world is pretty magical, but I loved this. This knocked it out of the park for me. It was, if any of you want to steal that, go and say, oh, if you'd like a reference, I'd love to have you talk to my mentee and give the context, say who I've been working with on learning X or onboarding on Y. And get involved with community projects. This can be open source, but this can be online education projects. This can be online mentoring projects. If you see someone doing something really cool to help other people, say, oh, can I help you help other people? And again, we come back around to it, getting involved with management of open source communities to say, oh, can I help with issue triage? Hey, can I help with the mailing list? Oh, can I help with documentation for contributions? Are all really solid ways to show this experience. Yeah. And some resources I really like here. Opensource.com does a lot of really good writing, a lot of good general open source work. It's bundled into the name. Red Hat does that, and they're very laid back about it. Both Rails Girls and Django Girls, I think Rails Girls isn't doing much these days, which is a bit heartbreaking. But Django Girls and similar projects where they're doing educational outreach are fantastic experience. One-to-one outreach via your network or just putting it into the ether. So this is proof of my elderly status in tech. But I think 7, 8 years ago, I started doing open one-to-one advice calls with people in tech. And I love them. They're very exciting. But it does give me the ability to say in interviews, oh, well, I've been doing this formal mentoring for blah, blah years. And here are the lessons learned. That sounds very fancy. Again, same way you'd go onto meetup.com to say, can I speak at a thing? You say, oh, can I help with a thing? It's usually a little bit less weird if you want to volunteer and you've been attending that meetup. So they know you, they know who you are. And then local communities and events. Again, if you see someone or you hear someone doing something cool, say, hey, can I help you do this cool thing? And we're coming right up to the end of stuff. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about finding work. So there is a Devrel Slack, which is sort of this closed community. It's very, very cool and fancy. Let me go ahead and prop that into you. I've also recently chatted to a couple other folks in tech who came to get me. They said, Jess, we're Jess. Well, it's terribly informal. We're hiring for entry level or junior DevRel roles. Could you share this with folks? So I just chatted to Knut is the gentleman who's the head of DevRel over at Sanity. And I'll just drop these all into the chat. And Sanity's hiring for DevRel at all levels. And they think, oh, somebody who's worked with a content management system before, or somebody who's interested in that space might be a really good fit. Here is a permanent role. Oh, heck, where's my cursor? Everything's terrible. Computers were a mistake. Computers are fine, aren't they? So here are some UK-based roles with Huawei. I know that it says that these are contract, but they are perm roles. And these are unfortunately only in the United Kingdom. I'm sorry about that. I just chatted to these folks earlier today, and they were sweethearts. And 100 milliseconds are really, really interesting folks. They're doing really good with funding, and they're hiring, I believe, remote anywhere in the world. And they are, oh, I think they made a typo with the, I promise they made a typo with the salary there. And they're looking for folks from across that. They're a brand new startup doing online video. And I bet you money that they're looking to add a zero on the end of those salaries, huh? And I talked to them today, and the CEO, the founder, is a really, really chill gentleman. If you're interested in getting into DevRel, go and chat to them, and they're such sweethearts. If you say, oh, Jess, DevRel sounds great, but I'm more interested in education. I chatted to the folks at Kong. I'm just dropping links in here. It's shameful. I just chatted to the folks at Kong, and they're hiring a developer educator. So say, oh, I like the idea of DevRel, but I want to do more teaching, more hands-on stuff with folks. What a good fit. Yeah. Oh, and you can tell folks you found this from me or not. There's no bonus. I don't think you're going to get any benefit by saying, oh, I know Jess. The good folks at Preset, I'm going to drop this in right now, are hiring remote in the US. Sorry, these are just a bunch of links. I hope they sync up. And then the nice folks at Big Commerce, I believe this is US based as well, are hiring 4 different DevRels at all levels. Huawei says no longer accepting applications. I'm reasonably sure that's not true. How about I go and not yell, but I go and gently shove? There we are. That's polite. I'm going to go ahead and I'll go and have a polite word with the person who passed that to me. And if you want to go ahead and check that again tomorrow, if it still says no longer accepting applications tomorrow, you know what? Then I was wrong and I owe you a formal apology. But I will make a note right now. Look at this. Jess ask about Huawei DevRel role post. There we go. Once it's written down, it exists. I'll go ahead and chase that up. Thank you so much for flagging that for me. So, um, yeah. Does anybody have any questions? You all can ask whatever you want. You're not going to be rude or weird. I'm super happy to talk about money. I'm super happy to talk about what interview processes look like. Or if folks don't have a ton of questions, we can just all bop on and have an easy morning or evening, or I guess some mid-afternoon for a couple of y'all. Yeah, let me know if there are any questions I can answer for you at all. Similarly, if anybody else has any advice for getting into Devrel, I would be absolutely delighted to hear about it. Oh, that Huawei role does indeed say they're no longer. Hmm. I'm going to go ahead and have a little bit of a word there. Wonderful. So, if nobody else has any questions, I'll go ahead and let you all go to have as easy an afternoon as is possible. I say afternoon, it's dinner time here. If you do have questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, or you want to chat to me afterwards, oh, cool. How else? Oh, no. So, can I chat about some DevRel jobs I've had, or like a project? Yeah. So I've done a lot of longer consulting roles. And these days they can be really different. So you almost caught me saying my favorite. One of the DevRel roles I was really excited about. All right, don't pick favorites. Was working with Mozilla. So I was managing a um, large scale volunteer DevRel org. And I really, really liked that, getting to work with global volunteers. And Howell makes a good point to say, no, Jess, stay on topic. Talk to me what a day-to-day or what an average week might be like. Yeah, that seems fair. You know, I was about to waffle on forever about how much I love volunteers and privacy-focused stuff, and that's not what's useful for folks. So, in a hypothetical role as an individual contributor as a DevRel, maybe not as a manager, maybe I would hypothetically find myself um, doing streaming like this. Maybe I'm going to be writing a blog post. Ooh, maybe I'm going to be turning some messy stuff. Many of my engineers in the past have been beautiful writers, but maybe I'm going to take some draft copy from the engineers or from the founders and turn that into a blog post or a tutorial. Maybe I'm going to be traveling. Ooh, maybe when the world comes back, I'll be traveling to go to a conference. Maybe I'm going to be doing a lot of bug fixes or if I'm on an open source project, I might be doing a lot of issue management. The challenge is saying, oh, what does a normal day look like or a normal week look like? It's really challenging because the tasks can be so varied role to role. But even within the same job, week to week, you might be doing something radically different. Maybe you're running a conference and that takes up all of your November. And then you're back to writing a lot of blog posts and doing videos. It saying it depends sounds like a cop out, doesn't it? But I'm so sorry that it depends. Yeah, I really like DevRel because the tasks you're doing and the roles you're doing are weird and exciting and they change so much. But it can be really frustrating and weird because the roles you do in DevRel are weird and exciting, and day to day or week to week, they might change really dramatically. Yeah, that's a really solid question. I'm so sorry that the core answer is it depends. It's very unsatisfying. Wonderful. If we don't have any other questions, I might go ahead and politely bop off into the world. I will go ahead and have a chat with Huawei and see, oh, hey, can you all, if you're still hiring, pretty please, can you put this back live? Oh, do you know what? It may well be that going to the Huawei site instead of LinkedIn might make sense, isn't it? Let me just go ahead and lazily look how perfectly lazy this. I'm just going to give you the generic, the very generic. I'm going to give you the overall, hey, Here's where, oh, hey, here's where all of their roles are. So if they're Devrel roles, they'll be in there. Even easier. Go hunt them down. If you're interested in these roles, please start applying early. Like there's tons of places hiring right now. And please don't get discouraged if it takes a little bit of time to break in. Um, Getting your first DevRel role, just like getting your first, just like getting your first DevRel really kind of sucks a little bit, right? Because folks say, oh, everyone's hiring in DevRel. You say, oh, well, why is it so hard to get my first job then? It's a bit unfair. But once you're in that first job, I promise you, if you go through all the faff of getting into your first DevRel job, you're going to have recruiters emailing you within 3 months to be like, oh, do you want a different job? Just because recruiters aren't lazy, recruiters are busy, but just having developer relations on your LinkedIn or on your resume or in your background means that folks be like, oh, they've done this before. Let's see if we can get them to do it for me. I'll go ahead and let you go. I hope you will have the easiest early morning or evening or end of your night. Please do have the chillest possible time. And if there's ever anything I can do that's helpful for you if you're trying to get into DevRel, please come and chat to me. You're never bothering me, I promise. I'll let you go. Bye, lovelies.